Empires don't shatter in a single thunderclap. They crumble region by region until a map that once glowed with power becomes a story of disappearance. From the windswept mountains in the far north to sun-bleached deserts in the south, from misty ocean coasts to fertile river valleys, one state once claimed supremacy: Rome. It dictated law, shaped trade, projected armies, and convinced millions that its order would last forever. Yet everyone knows how the tale ends, so the question is not whether it fell, but how the fall unfolded step by step. Did every frontier fail the same way, or did each region write its own farewell to Roman authority? Before we journey through that unraveling, we need to understand why the seemingly unbreakable machine began to grind and seize. Political intrigue hollowed leadership, religious disputes split loyalties, wealth drained, trust fractured, and the habit of civil war turned governance into a battlefield. At times, it looked like the empire might steady itself. At other moments, everything seemed moments from collapse. Which force truly mattered most? This episode follows that tension across geography and time. We'll track how lands once tied to Roman rule gradually slipped away, sometimes with sudden disaster, sometimes after decades of exhaustion. We begin in an age that still believed Rome was eternal, then move through centuries of crisis, recovery, renewed hope, and final quiet. Along the way, armies defect, provinces are abandoned, rebels rise, faith reshapes loyalty, and new powers wait at the gates. And there's another layer: memory. Each region remembered Rome differently. Some mourned it, some resented it, some simply adapted to whatever authority replaced it. By the end, we won't just see borders erased, we'll understand how a civilization famous for endurance reached the moment when endurance simply was not enough. So let's travel across the empire as it shrinks, province after province, year after year, pressure after pressure, and discover how a world that once called itself eternal learned what it means to run out of time. Our path starts with the empire still confident, yet already scarred. Even in its youth, setbacks revealed how fragile ambition could be. Beyond the Rhine, a catastrophic ambush shattered legions and convinced Rome that some landscapes were too costly to tame. Revenge followed, pride demanded answers, trophies were reclaimed, but a permanent frontier formed, and that decision echoed through the centuries. It was a warning disguised as a border. Strength could win battles, yet still concede entire worlds to caution. Do not forget it. From there, Rome marched onward, stronger on the surface, yet filling with hairline cracks. Civil wars became common, assassinations felt routine, finances buckled as rulers changed too fast for stability to root. Even religion, meant to unite, sometimes sharpened division. Trade slowed, borders trembled, and foreign powers watched like wolves waiting for weakness. The turmoil reached a bearing pattern during what later generations would call a prolonged crisis. Dozens of internal conflicts erupted in just a few decades, draining soldiers, money, and trust. One ruler after another claimed legitimacy, and armies spent as much effort fighting fellow Romans as guarding the frontiers. When a state bleeds itself, who needs an invader?
And yet the empire did not simply collapse that day. Time and again, territories were lost, reclaimed, fractured, and restored. Rebellions broke away. Imperial armies forced them back. Invasions broke through. Counteroffensives pushed them out. There was still resilience, still discipline, still something unyielding in the system. But every emergency carved away a little more of Rome's ability to respond to the next one. Meanwhile, the military itself was changing. Maintaining vast armies strained populations and treasuries. Recruitment faltered, and commanders increasingly leaned on outsiders who served for pay, food, status, and opportunity. They were skilled, brave, and often essential, yet their loyalty was practical rather than emotional. Service was a career, not a heritage. What happens when an empire's sword no longer feels Roman? Over time, the army became a world of its own. Fewer senators commanded, fewer traditional elites treated war as duty. Instead, professional soldiers and frontier peoples filled the ranks, hardened, capable, familiar with hardship, and increasingly influential. Military service with Rome still promised wealth, rations, armor, and status, far beyond what life across the border could offer. That attraction swelled the ranks, yet also shifted the character of those ranks forever. Then came humiliations that forced Rome to integrate whole communities of uncertain allegiance into its forces. Victory could still be won, but discipline eroded. If newcomers refused old punishment, veterans asked why they should obey either. Armies fought armies, generals distrusted courts, and politics sharpened into knives. Each decision to survive today quietly weakened tomorrow. Power struggles at the top worsened everything. Emperors rose and fell without any trusted rule of succession, and soldiers increasingly decided who deserved the throne. Courts plotted, commanders rivaled each other, and each political gamble stripped strength from the frontiers. While enemies gathered beyond rivers and seas, Rome wasted precious years contesting Rome itself. Every delay weakened faith, every quarrel narrowed options, and every choice carried a hidden cost for the empire. As the struggle for power intensified, rival generals and court factions shaped the fate of entire provinces. Without a dependable method to choose leadership, every transition carried danger. Sometimes a child heir, sometimes a political favorite, sometimes a strong man in armor. None of it guaranteed unity. Armies proclaimed rulers, courtiers whispered alternatives. The result was paralysis at moments when decisiveness meant survival. Brilliant commanders did emerge, men capable of saving entire regions, yet even they fell to intrigue. Suspicion, jealousy, and fear devoured them. When the state eliminates its greatest defenders, what future does it expect? Meanwhile, distant territories learned a painful truth. Loyalty to the center did not guarantee protection from crisis. In one dramatic episode, troops stationed in the northwest abandoned their posts to follow a claimant marching toward greater opportunity. That decision stripped a province of its last experienced defenders. Local communities suddenly faced external raids without Roman help, and the absence of Roman authority reshaped daily life overnight. Leaders who once enforced imperial order vanished, and people had to rely on their own arms, customs, and alliances. Elsewhere, political meddling caused disasters that echoed for decades. Internal feuds and palace maneuvering opened doors for ambitious outsiders. Africa, once among the most valuable regions supporting Roman prosperity, slipped away due to short-sighted decisions rooted more in rivalry than strategy. Breadbasket lands that had sustained cities now answered to new rulers. Society in the West felt the pressure. Taxes rose, trust in government declined. People looked for security beyond imperial structures. The church filled that vacuum, offering shelter, identity, and leadership when the state seemed distant or unreliable. Clergy gained influence as congregations grew, and eventually the religious institution mirrored administration in hierarchy, territory, and authority. It gave comfort and order, but it also pulled energy away from the old civic system. For many struggling citizens, joining religious life meant exemption from military duty and taxation. Service to faith appeared safer than service to empire. That shift slowly drained the state of manpower while increasing the need to recruit outsiders for defense. A cycle formed: fewer local soldiers, more reliance on external fighters, more doubt about loyalty, more instability. By the time new waves of migrants, raiders, and opportunistic kingdoms pressed at borders, Western Rome's official armies were impressive on parchment, yet fragile in reality. Numbers existed, discipline did not always follow, and leadership fractured constantly. Strength that once deterred enemies now appeared uncertain, and uncertainty invites challenge. The pressure soon translated into territory slipping beyond imperial reach. A brutal winter turned river barriers into bridges, and groups long held back crossed in force. Towns burned, countryside fractured, cities bargained for survival. Commanders reacted too slowly, resources were thin, and what should have been frontier skirmishes turned into irreversible transformations of power. Rich Western lands were carved into new realms. Some remained nominally under imperial supervision, others simply ignored it, acting as their own kingdoms in everything but name. Attempts to reassert control rarely matched the speed of unfolding change. Where Rome once imposed law, compromise now defined politics. Strength was no longer unquestioned, it was negotiated. Meanwhile, islands and distant provinces realized help was not coming. One region, abandoned of soldiers when they marched to support an imperial pretender, faced relentless seaborne attackers. With no garrisons to protect them, local leaders reverted to older traditions of defense and governance. Roman authority faded not through a grand proclamation, but through silence. No orders, no reinforcements, no return. When protection disappears, obedience dissolves with it. Across decades, collapse in the West became less theoretical and more geographical. Land after land moved beyond effective imperial control. Some fell to ambitious neighbors, some to internal warlords, some simply drifted away as administration failed. A once mighty Western state dissolved into fragments, small kingdoms, shifting alliances, proud cities trying to survive in a harsher world. The empire that once absorbed others now found itself unable to hold even its core. When the last Western emperor was displaced, it marked the symbolic end of a political order nearly 4 centuries old in those lands. But it did not erase Roman memory, culture, or influence. Roads remained, laws endured, faith structures persisted, people still spoke Latin dialects. Rome as a government was gone. Rome as a legacy continued to breathe through new powers who ruled former Roman ground. Yet the story was only half finished, because the East did not fall with the West. The eastern half survived change, resisted disaster, and for a time even recovered lands lost by its fallen partner. Officials there still called themselves Romans, still saw their empire as the rightful continuation of the old order, and still fought to prove it. Their fight would last for centuries more, filled with revival, brilliance, catastrophe, and the relentless pressure of rising rivals, until a final reckoning loomed on the horizon. In the East, determination shaped ambition. Leaders dreamed not only of survival, but of restoration. Skilled generals marched, fleets sailed, and banners bearing imperial symbols returned to regions once thought permanently lost. Victories rekindled pride. Once again,
Cities in distant lands pledged loyalty to the empire based in the great eastern capital. A legendary ruler orchestrated much of this resurgence. Through meticulous planning and extraordinary military leadership, territories around the Mediterranean briefly fell back under Roman control, at least Roman as the East defined it. Northern Africa returned to the fold. Italy felt imperial standards again. Coastal lands across the sea echoed with renewed allegiance. It seemed for a shining moment that history itself might reverse. But holding reclaimed land proved far harder than winning it. Enemies did not disappear. Internal debate, religious tensions, and financial strain persisted. Some revived provinces slipped away quickly. Others endured longer, but never fully stabilized. New forces emerged from beyond the empire's traditional horizons, unified, energetic, and driven by faith and opportunity. Their arrival changed everything. Fresh expansion surged across the Eastern world with astonishing speed. Exhausted from earlier wars and economically strained, the empire struggled to match the pace. Crucial regions were lost within years. Fertile lands, holy cities, and prized economic centers changed allegiance. Administrative structures shattered. Military counterattacks faltered. The empire remained alive, but significantly reduced, reshaped, and undeniably wounded. For a time, resilience returned. Culture flourished. Education revived. Art, theology, and philosophy blossomed. The state reformed laws, defended core strongholds, and experimented with governance. This renaissance delayed final ruin and showed that brilliance could persist even while territory slipped away. But light could not fully hide the gathering storm. Coastal islands, strategic regions, and proud cities gradually succumbed to relentless outside pressure. Some fell to ambitious rivals in Europe, others to powerful forces sweeping from the south. Long-held territories that had symbolized continuity dissolved one by one. Meanwhile, a catastrophic defeat opened the heartland to a new wave of conquerors, transforming the empire's geographic identity practically overnight. The once dominant eastern state now clung to fragments, its strength reduced to thin lines on maps and isolated pockets of authority. Still, even then, the empire endured, adaptable, stubborn, and unwilling to accept doom quietly. Civil wars, shifting nobles, and internal rivalries continued to sap strength, but resilience persisted. Diplomacy, alliances, and sheer determination delayed catastrophe again and again. Yet destiny was closing in, and the forces massing against the Eastern Roman world were unlike anything it had faced before. What followed was a century defined by danger layered upon danger. Ambitious nobles carved out territories for themselves, acting as near-independent rulers while still claiming imperial loyalty. Authority fragmented, economies weakened, and central rule became increasingly symbolic beyond the capital's walls. The empire, once a unified force, turned into a patchwork of interests fighting for survival beneath a single imperial name. Internal politics descended into repeated coups. Leaders rose through intrigue rather than stability. Some blinded rivals, others imprisoned brothers, and some simply vanished victims of court plots. While this unfolded, threats in the Balkans surged. Formerly subject peoples reasserted independence, allies drifted away, and powerful neighbors pushed into lands that had once been key parts of imperial strength. Then came humiliation from the West. Powerful neighbors who had previously cooperated, or at least tolerated imperial weakness, returned as enemies. Cities were plundered, and prestige suffered blows far beyond territory lost. Even when some lands were eventually recovered, reputation never fully healed. To rivals, the empire no longer appeared eternal, it merely looked vulnerable. As the 12th century closed, fragmentation accelerated. Tax resources dwindled, loyalty fractured, provincial governors behaved as kings, cultural unity weakened as local identities strengthened. Entire regions slipped into semi-separation without formally declaring independence. It was not sudden collapse, it was slow unraveling. Then disaster struck with brutal clarity. Western crusaders, meant to march elsewhere, instead turned their ambitions toward the imperial capital. A city once considered the heart of Christian civilization was stormed, looted, and occupied by outsiders. The government went into exile, dividing into successor states scrambling for legitimacy. Everything sacred about imperial unity shattered. Although the empire eventually reclaimed its capital, it returned diminished. Internal civil wars drained manpower. Rising rivals exploited chaos. Once proud territories either defected, broke away, or were consumed by emerging powers. Entire regions that had once anchored imperial dominance were lost to new states with their own ambitions and cultures. Recovery remained superficial. Reality was far harsher beneath ceremony. A powerful new force now dominated the region. Their armies moved with purpose, discipline, and expanding vision. They seized strategic footholds, crossed into Europe, and dismantled rival kingdoms methodically. Step by step, they encircled the remnants of Rome, isolating its territories, cutting supply lines, and shrinking hope. The empire still possessed courage and faith, but its enemies possessed momentum, numbers, and time. Diplomacy offered brief breathing room. Unexpected events occasionally delayed disaster, but delays are not salvation. They are pauses in an inevitable storm. The empire had survived miracle after miracle before. Now, miracles were running out. At last, encirclement hardened into destiny. Fortresses fell one after another, key cities submitted, and the empire's land routes narrowed to fragile corridors hugging the capital. Each year seemed to remove another layer of safety. Traders spoke in whispers, diplomats bargained desperately, citizens prayed while engineers strengthened walls whose glory belonged to centuries past. Then came the siege that would test faith, machines, and resolve. Cannon thunder reshaped the meaning of defense, breaking traditions of warfare older than memory. Relief fleets failed to save the city. Allies hesitated, rival states calculated, and the besiegers tightened their grip. Inside the capital, leaders disagreed on policy, yet stood united in fear of what losing meant for history itself. As the assault intensified, the defenders, locals, volunteers, allies from distant lands, fought with courage beyond expectation. The emperor himself refused escape, choosing to share the city's fate. Streets filled with smoke, prayer, shouting, and the relentless echo of bombardment. Day after day, the walls held. Night after night, the exhausted held them together again.
But determination cannot always conquer mathematics. Numbers, gunpowder, momentum, and exhaustion finally tipped the balance. A breach opened, battle flooded inward. Last stands formed in squares and narrow alleys, while banners of a new order rose above towers that had once proclaimed Roman eternity. By dawn's end, the city had changed hands and an age had closed. What followed was both ending and beginning. The great capital became the jewel of a rising power. The empire that had carried Roman identity through 1,000 storms vanished from the map, yet its influence persisted. Language, law, architecture, scholarship, and memory continued to shape the world. Empires die, their echoes do not. When we look back across regions, centuries, and choices, we see no single cause, no perfect villain, no simple lesson. A civilization can be brilliant and fragile at once. Internal division weakens walls far earlier than enemy armies do.
Adaptation brings revival, but only for a time. In the end, the story of Rome's shrinking world reminds us that power is never permanent, but legacy often is. Across every frontier we traced, decline never looked identical. Some regions fell suddenly, others drifted away over lifetimes. Yet all together they formed a map of shrinking certainty and expanding consequence. That is why remembering matters. Understanding how strength erodes helps us question our own assumptions today. If this journey gave you perspective, support more explorations by liking the video and joining Winds of Thought. History speaks. We decide whether to listen. Because every fallen empire began as a confident one. Uneasy lessons are worth keeping close to us.